I'd like to warmly welcome the two additional panelists. So on my left, Jaime Tarrazón. Long title, you're the Senior Vice President of the European Cinema Exhibitors Association, UNIC. You represent the Spanish Association, and you're also obviously a cinema operator your own right. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
And we have Koen de Groot. Is that correct?
Well, not really, but okay. It's good enough.
Koen?
Good enough.
It's pronounced as Koen.
All right, Koen.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Koen. Koen is business analyst, business intelligence analyst for NVPI, the Dutch Entertainment Association, and you're also working still for Film Research Netherlands.
Yes.
And you have an amazing overview of the cinema industry here in the Netherlands. You helped put together a conference recently a few months ago. So you know a lot about current developments in the industry in the Netherlands. Jaime, I'd like to start with you. You've seen the presentation from Kim, and obviously in Spain you've had your own very your own developments and your own history. The industry has been declining for a long time, and it's been coming out of it re-emerged. And in the context of that presentation, what were the key drivers for the decline, but also for getting back on track?
Well, as everybody could see in Kim's presentation, in Spain we had a downward tendency down to 2013. So we lost a lot of admissions there. And then from 2013 we started catching up. So the main reason, I could say not the only, but the main reason for that decline was the economy in Spain. There were difficult times for the whole country, and people reacted. I mean, Spain survived the economic crisis by cutting on wages. Wages were reduced between 20-30% average. So that's a strong blow to the family economies. So at that point, people stopped going to the cinema, as they stopped going to the gym, and they stopped cutting on everything that was not essential for the economy. That means that it's not the people were not interested in cinema. Yes, they were interested, but they could not afford it. No. What changed that in 2013 is that we made a very, I would say, timely promotion, or with what we call La Fiesta del Cine, which is a 3 days reduced price promotion nationwide. And that put us back into the equation. No? It was a time that a lot of companies or some industries were reacting to that economic crisis by reducing prices. No? And we did that at the right moment, and the reaction was huge. I mean, that brought back us a lot of people that had stopped going to the cinema or were going less to the cinema due to the prices. No? Although that we had been reducing the prices even too much to that level. No? So if that was mainly the reason for that decline, what helped us climb back again and join the 100 million tickets per year club, it was on one side that we started working heavily on loyalty programs. And that we started investing back in cinemas. No? For a long period, theater owners had not been able to invest in their cinemas. And since, I would say, 2013, 2014, some cinema owners started investing in their cinemas, and that also helped grow the attendance and the reaction. And now we are basically in that process. No?
So you see the Fiesta del Cines as something contributing to the reach factor that Kim outlined?
Yeah. At that point, it was a turning point.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. And Koen, if I can turn to you, I mean, the Netherlands, that's quite remarkable if you look at the numbers. I just noted down 57% admissions growth over 20 years. whereas other countries in Western Europe have, sorry to point to Germany, but have declined. So, you know, again, considering what Kim said, what were the factors do you think that boosted admissions in the Netherlands?
I think, especially for the last 10 years, it's really have to do with investments and building. So a lot of cinemas, like around 20% more cinemas in 10 years. So more bricks, more people. But if you look at the attendance per screen, it didn't really change. So it did really help.
Yeah.
But also a lot of investments in the experience. So we're already talking about PLFs. Screens, like especially 40X screens in the ScreenX movie. There are a lot of them, and there are coming a lot of them. And if you ask them, are they profitable? For me, it's hard to say because I cannot look at the repeat visits because only cinema owners can do that. But if you only look at the market share, it's really good. It's around 8%, and last year it was about 7%. So it's rising, and if you look at the ticket price, it's also going up a lot, and that's also because of the extra cost people pay for premium experience. Other investments are like investment in food and in how your cinema look. So getting people to your cinema and letting their stay before and after is more and more important for cinema owners. There are some factors, and next to that also, of course, the content. Great content gets a lot of people to the cinemas.
Why are those types of investment not something that you're factoring in here? Is it hard to do at a national level?
No, there is a lot of investment in Germany, and since 5 years the number of screens is rising again. So we were at 4,400 screens a couple of years ago. Now we are close to 5,000. So there is an investment, but and we invest a lot in VIP cinemas. So the topics deluxe recliner, VIP sofas, and these things are quite successful in Germany. So the number of screens is rising and the number of seats remains the same because the new cinemas have quite small auditoriums. And we have one site in Münster, which is our biggest one with 800,000 admissions per year. They are building 5 new boutique cinemas and 4 micro cinemas. So for 6 to 10 seats. For renting and special occasions. They are much more expensive then, but I think this is a trend, at least in Germany, which works quite good.
Can I say something extra?
Please
That? Because this is also a trend in the Netherlands. You see a lot of recliner seats. So you have big cinemas with a lot of seats. They reduce the amount of seats for recliner seats, but the same amount of people are still coming there.
Yeah.
So it's a real driver for admissions.
That also happens in Spain. It's currently there are a lot of cinemas, but sometimes it's also due to the fact that you can make, as Koen was saying, that you can make the same attendance with less seats. So then you give more comfort to your cinemas, or maybe those cinemas were overbuilt and they were too large. No?
But it's interesting. I think you, David, said it that cinema is a democratic thing, and people don't want to feel apart by the luxury of others. And if you
think that's the case, or is it just
no?
an
If you go to France, for example, you have very narrow rows, narrow seats, and for them. Cinema is more like theater. It's a cultural event, and they are going to. And if you go to the biggest cinema in Paris, Châtelet, Les Halles, the UGC with almost 30 screens. Beside, there's a library of François Truffaut in the biggest shopping center. So they feature François Truffaut's bibliothèque there, and you can see hardcore art house beside of Avengers. So they don't separate art house and they don't separate art house films from mainstream films. For them, film is a kind of art, and they enjoy it. And it's much more a cultural event than in any other country I looked closer to.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly a country one can admire when it comes to its cinema-going culture.
Yes.
Well, let's just briefly come back to that concept of reach or range. Maybe you can just, for those who didn't listen at that one moment, define it again, and also speak a little bit about not the drivers of cinema going, but how can you grow reach?
This is a very good question. As reach, we define reach as those people who go go to the cinema at least once a year. So in Germany, we have 60% which never go to the cinema, or at least less once a year. So maybe they see the Bond film every 3 years and stop in the meantime going to the movies. In 2019, we had a almost 15% rise of attendance, and I think we also will have a plus in reach, because films, there was a German film, but Bohemian Rhapsody or Joker, or even Star Wars, these kinds of films attends people who go very rarely to the movies and just see this 1 or 2 films a year. Why is it so different in other countries? And well, for France, it's not very surprising. I find surprising that UK has more than 70 and America has almost 80%. So there's a very small portion which does not go to the movies. So all the marketing things you do reach actually 60, 70 or 80% of the population, and you can force them to come.
They resonate.
In Germany, it's quite difficult, because we actually have to incentive the 60% who were not going to reach them. But this is much more expensive and much more difficult. And I think one explanation is that when free TV started, or private TV started in Germany, there were a lot of broadcasting stations which show movies. And right now we have almost 30,000 movies in the television without paying for. 30,000 per year. And in other countries, like France, the pay TV was much more successful. Pay TV in Germany was never successful in former times, when they only showed movies. Now they started with sport, which is something different. But if you want to see a movie, you can see movies in the television all the time, all the day, on 20 or 25 channels, several films a day. So the competition by television was very, very big in Germany, and much bigger than in other countries.
And going back to reach, how can the factors that could drive it? So you mentioned price is one thing. Let's dive on. Let's focus on price.
What the French or what France did, which I think we have to do it in Germany too, is the initiative that everybody who is under 14 years pays only €4 in every film and every cinema and every day. This was 3 or 4 years ago. There was a change of the VAT in discussion, and the government said, okay, if you make this €4 initiative, we will keep to the lower VAT tax. And I tried to establish this idea in Germany, that everybody who is not older than 15 pays only €5. So the average ticket price in Germany is about €1 more expensive than in France. And all the cinemas, the big chains and also the small cinemas, said, oh, this is a very good idea, we should do that, because we have to force the young audience that they will come back when they are older. If they have their first visit when they are 30 or 45, they won't come. So they have to be educated. It's a social skill to go to the movies, and if they don't learn it, you will lose them, even if they are older. So you have to give initiative and incentives for the young audience. What happened? All the distributors said, some said, oh, good idea, but the ones who have films especially for the audience between 10 and 15 said, no, we don't do it, because we are losing €2 or €3 per ticket, and 80% of our tickets is in the range of people who are below 15 or below 16, and we won't do it. So they did not recognize that it is an investment for the future, and of course we do it because we think more people are coming. We don't only reduce the price, we want to have more people coming. This is the idea. But they weren't even interested to do a pilot project on this pricing scheme. It's very sad. But I think this is one important thing to raise the range to get younger people.
Yeah. And did you manage I mean, how did you were in such a situation that you didn't have to convince distribution?
Distributors, I don't know if there are any in the
there's
audience.
None in the room, I think.
Okay, so they are to blame because they usually block these initiatives. Even with La Fiesta del Cine, we now have problems with the distributors because, as I say, we are dying from success, no? Because now we do 2 editions every year. Now they want to reduce it to 1, and the same arguments that Kim was saying. But I wanted to point out when you mentioned about reach, this concept was the same thing that happened with La Fiesta del Cine when we started when we pushed it in 2013. That because of the economy problems in Spain, we had reduced reach very much. There are a lot of people that stopped going to the cinema. And then you have to do initiatives like could be the La Fiesta del Cine, the €5 for under 14 that they have in France, or things like that give them an excuse to come back because they know that we are there. I mean, could be this, it could be content. I mean, you have, in the previous panel, they were talking about young audiences and about digital era, young consumers that they work on social networks, on a digital environment. You have an example in Italy with a film made by a social influencer that was released in Italy because she's Italian, and she made a film on that, a content that is not the usual content that we can have in a cinema, and in Italy it was a huge success. So if you bring content that attracts these audiences, they will come because they know that we exist. But we need to give them excuses, as Kim said, reasons why they can come back. No.
Okay.
And also, there's also that you have to adapt the environment, your lobbies, the way you communicate with your customers to all these things. No?
I'll get to investments into the experience in a moment because after all, this is ISE. But I wanted to ask one more thing about price, and if you, Koen, maybe starting with you, do you think that dynamic pricing can be a tool to also increase the number of people who
dynamic pricing is a big topic at the moment, but mostly there's talked about and it's not really implemented yet. It could be a good tool for simple things like paying less for sitting in the front row or sitting in the back. It could be really easy implemented, but for now, cinemas are not really doing it. They're mostly investing in other things than the price. But there's also a problem with dynamic pricing, and that's the flexibility of programming. So if you want to pay less for a booking in advance, it's hard to program your films. So that's also a big barrier to implement dynamic pricing into cinema. But I still think like small other things like paying less for front row seats. I think cinemas can do that already, but they're still holding it back. There are some cinemas in the Netherlands that are playing with price, but just a regular price. So some certain cinemas in smaller, rarer countries with less visitors, they drop the overall price, but not in a dynamic way. So it is something everybody's talking about, but it's not really going somewhere yet, as far as I know.
Do you guys have comments on that, or?
Yeah, well, I agree with him that pricing is obviously a driver, but there are complex things, like he said, with dynamic pricing, but we've seen it in one of the reasons that the decline that we had in Spain was because everybody was reducing prices straight away. So if he had €6, you put it 5, I put it 4. In the end, he was paying 3.
The wrong dynamic.
So that really destroyed bottom line. So you have to do it that with a certain intelligence and for a reason. Those cinema chains that survive, basically in Spain, what they develop is loyalty programs, where you actually control what you are doing with your prices. I can offer you that you've come 4 times an extra very attractive price so that you come for the 5th time. But if he comes once a year, I won't give him the same rate. So you have to be knowing better your audiences and working on those things.
I'll actually take that as a segue, and the question to you in terms of data and how we, is the way the way that cinemas deal with their data, analyze their data, and possibly share their data, is that also a way to increase reach? And I don't know if you're allowed to talk about your loyalty program, but you're working on one.
We are still working on one, but to attract people with the cinema which are not going to the movies right now, you can do it with statistical twins. So if you have the information of people, age, sex, interested in things like this and that, and the only difference is that they are going to the movies or not, and then buy data for people who have statistical similarities to the ones who go to the movies and try to attract them. So this you can do. But the other thing which is more interesting is to remember the people they saw the last Bond, or I don't know, a film, or the last Marvel film, and the next one is coming, and try to remember them that the new one is starting. So the profile of the audience, you use the profile of the audience to give them information when a new film starts. Because if the normal audience goes 4, 5, 6 times a year to the movies, and then you always have to remember them that a new film is starting. So also interesting, in France, they do nothing with loyalty except their carte illimitée. They don't use data, at least not to an extent which I had expected. And so France is really interesting because it works completely different.
And it's very much one big system, and you need the entire system in order to make the cinema-going culture as successul as it is.
You start preschool. You have to start preschool. Go to a cinema museum in Paris. You see their preschool kids going to the exhibition. It's really crazy. They learn it in school. On Thursday, when the new movie starts in the cinema, they don't show films on television. So there are a lot of things. They have 1 billion subsidies for producing films. So the Germany, which has 20 million more inhabitants, has 300 million for the film subsidy. They have 1 billion.
That's unfair. Do you want to know? Do you want to know what the subsidies in Spain are? Better not say. I would be ashamed to say this.
So we're going to switch to another topic, and I also want to remind the audience that we'll open for a Q&A in 5 to 10 minutes. So do think about a few questions, because I think it would be nice if we get a dialogue going. This, after all, I said it earlier, is ISE. So there's a lot of technology vendors in the audience, a lot of people interested in how technology can drive the cinema experience, and I'm just looking to you two. You obviously have an overview over the many companies in your group and about the investments that they are currently making or are thinking about, and you have obviously invested yourself recently into a few big things. So I'm interested in where do you think are the investment trends in technology now and in the future?
I think that there is no one solution or one thing that covers all. You have to choose for every location what really works. And as we always say, the important is enhancing the experience. People that go to the cinema want to have a very special experience. So what we have invested in technology can cover from digital signage, and I am not saying only about having some hardware on your lobby or things like that, which most cinemas in Spain more or less have, but actually introducing what we understand as digital signage. Is not just about sustainability, not using paper and having that. It's more than that. It's changing the way that you communicate with your audiences, and that includes especially younger audiences that are used to another type of communication, more audiovisual, more. You can give a lot more information, but you need to change the way you, and particularly in our company, we have had to change and to train our staff, because you have to communicate in a different way. No? Mm-hmm. And that is very important. And in Spain, at least you see, in the most successful cinemas, digital signage is one of the key drivers when we're talking about the lobby experience, or the way that your customers first perceive the cinema experience. Mm-hmm. Obviously, then there are different things that you can invest. There are cinema circuits in Spain where are going, as he was saying, for recliners, and they change all their seats to recliners. We have had a very successful experience with 4DX and ScreenX.
Okay, so you took the plunge.
I have the information that he doesn't have. I cannot share it. It's confidential. But certainly, it's a key driver, because it's experience. As he was saying, you are allowed to raise the price well above the average price. And customers, we usually say that they don't complain, but they're happy to pay that, because it's a completely different experience, something that they cannot have at home. And that, I think, is an attitude that theater owners should have. For several decades, we've been used to have the same offer to our customers. Mm-hmm. Now we need to keep improving year after year, because technology, the world is changing very fast, and we need to have new features more often than we used to have it in the past.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so you are actually one of the fewer, for the moment, exhibitors in Europe that decided to invest in this. And are you? Do you feel that it also has an impact on? How can I express this? Might it even drive people to other screens in the cinema? Does it enhance the image of the cinema itself?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are large companies investing in that in France, in Netherlands, in several places in Europe, and even in the UK. So yes, they need to find something different that they didn't expect, because a lot of perception, and part of what Kim said, or on the previous panel, young audiences still perceive the cinema as a traditional thing, not something of the new era. When you offer them these experiences, they change completely the perception. No? And we are very successful with this type of movies, 4DX movies, for example, with young audiences, with family audiences, with family films.
Okay. Kim, you mentioned to me on the phone a few weeks ago a statement by John Fithian.
I'm just thinking of this quote. Better wine than we are. Yeah? So do more, invest more in the experience and having a good time than in technical things. And I think at least it's an idea for the German market. On the other side, our group, I think, is the biggest D-Box user at least in Europe. We have 50 cinemas with D-Box, and we had the first 4DX cinema in Germany, and I think another 4 or 5 will follow in our group. So also these kinds of technologies are very interesting to attract especially a young audience. I'm out of this moving chair thing, so I would prefer atmosphere and maybe a glass of wine and a good food and a recliner and everything. So actually you have to do both. Yeah? But for me, as somebody who is a little bit older than the young audience, I like the quote from John Fithian, better wine than we are.
And I mean, your circuit is pretty diverse. There's some really big cinemas, but also some smaller ones in medium-sized towns. What do those operators do who cannot invest in?
What they really invest in is new screens in existing sites, because the pressure from the distributors. If you want to have Frozen, even in the 8th week, you have to play in the afternoon, in the evening, and in the late show. So you need more screens to have a variety. And you can get that with additional screens, and they can be smaller, and they will be equipped with more recliner and more luxurious. So this is the main investment: more screens and the boutique cinema kind of feeling. Maybe not in every cinema like Everyman does it in the UK, but in a similar way.
Mm-hmm. I want to open it up to, we could speak for a long time. I have only done one page of my questions. I'd like to open it up to the audience, but have one more question, because I know that the next panel is going to discuss streaming and everything that's related to it. So I'm wondering, as with you also maybe Koen, but mostly with the two operators here on the panel, do you have specific views on the impact of streaming?
So we had
a
very strong discussion in Germany about The Irishman. And while Roma was still shown by one big chain in Germany, The Irishman, no big chain and no big exhibitor showed that. So it was on 40 screens, I think, from almost 5,000. Irishman was shown. So there was a kind of boycott feeling. But as our competition lawyer said, when it starts raining, everybody uses his umbrella. And this is what the German cinema did. Mm-hmm. They don't want a film which is neglecting the window in a way they did. And I'm very fine with the Oscar prizes this year that Irishman didn't get any prize, even if it deserved it. But I think it was the right picture that the big films who are successful in the cinema, who respect the window, get the trophies.
Can I add to that? Because we just finished a study about the relationship between VOD and visiting the cinema. Firstly, we got the same results as already presented before. So people who go to the cinema watch Netflix a lot. Mm. But I think there is some fear, mostly to do with Windows. And there's a discussion about this, because do you want your traditional Windows forever? Or is there something going to change? I'm very curious how you think about this. Do you think there's possibilities for a more flexible model? Or do you think that's really going to hurt the cinema?
So Disney is sitting in their chair and is looking, what are they doing with Irishman? Mm-hmm. What are they doing with Marriage Story? When we start Disney Plus, we want to see what they are doing there. And so we said even The Irishman would be a more successful film. We have to say no, because then the whole ecosystem of the cinema industry is going down. Mm-hmm. I don't actually. Amazon Prime is quite similar to Netflix, but they respect the window, so there is a big difference. And everybody who uses Netflix also go to the movies. But 3 years ago, they saw 6 films. They had 6 cinema visits. Now they have 4.5. So these are the 20% we missed. So but we cannot do anything for that. But if they come with cinema productions like The Irishman, Marriage Story, and so on, we are not able to show them on our screen.
Let me answer that thing, because UNIC's position is very clear on that. We stick to our Windows policy that has been followed for years. And you have to understand that we have no conflict with Netflix. Actually, and your question comes from that, Netflix realized like several years ago that they were going to lose all the studio content. And you've seen that happening with Disney and all these things. So what they did, they got a lot of money, and they said, we are going to produce our own content, which is perfect. I mean, but how do you give your content the level of a cinema production? So they started a very successful communication strategy that's trying to say that they were fighting cinema, that they went to a festival that is designed, for example, the Cannes Film Festival is designed for promoting feature films that are then released in cinemas, and they wanted to put their own product. It's like if we go with a movie to a television festival, they will say, no, this is not the place to go. But that was smartly used by Netflix, and everybody, and your question, and a lot of questions come out saying, well, there is a conflict between cinema and Netflix. No, Netflix has their own business, but if they want to release their movies in the cinemas, we only ask them that they respect like everybody else does. Like the example that Kim was saying, that there is other platforms that have their content released in cinemas, and then they have their streaming live afterwards. But there is not a conflict from us with Netflix. It's Netflix that is using cinemas to promote its product.
So this is I wanted to give everybody also on our panel a chance to comment on it, and it's the topic of the next panel as well. So I apologize for hijacking it for at least for 5 minutes. And before Kim's lawyer parachutes down, I wanted to open this to the audience. If you have any questions or comments, we still have a couple of minutes on Kim's presentation, on what was discussed earlier.
It's too light. Come a bit closer.
Throw it.
It's Bas van Heek from Cineonic.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Jan. I have a question. It's a marketing question, advertising question. We talked about dynamic pricing, loyalty, also a little bit about investments and so on. My question is, do you believe that exhibitors are relying a lot or maybe too much on the movie slate, distributor marketing efforts, on admissions and so on? And do they do enough efforts to promote their own movie-going experience to get people in the theaters?
I think so, yes. We rely a lot on that. You can see it that fantastic films like Ford versus Ferrari, which was a film in Germany with no advertising and no initiatives from the distributors. It was taken from Fox when they went to Disney, and you see the numbers were very, very low. And sometimes we see very good films on trade shows, and then we see, oh, this distributor is not able to promote this film properly. And it's very, very hard for a cinema to do it by themselves. What they can do is all the social media thing, which works quite good. But television and PR, it's only done by big distributors, for my opinion.
Historically, you're right. I mean, theater owners had in the past always only relied on distributors doing their jobs. The thing is that in recent years, we developed or started developing skills, reaching out to our audiences. And yes, we are now making better efforts in reaching out to our audiences. But there is a lot of things that can be improved in that, you're right.
I think it's happening in the Netherlands a lot. If you look at, for example, Pathé, it's a huge James Bond experience built on the Central Station in Utrecht. I think it's...
By Pathé?
by Pathé, but I think it's in cooperation with the distributor. But these things happen more and more. So more types of creative marketing, except for traditional. So I think, especially the big chains, do invest in it.
Okay. Anybody else for the, what is it? Roll the mic.
Yes, thank you. What are your thoughts on 2-for-1 midweek promotions or unlimited cinema subscription schemes?
We have two examples in Germany who have a subscription. The one is UCI, the Odeon daughter. They are quite happy with it, at least they didn't stop it. And we have another one which is only in Berlin, an art house chain, the York Group. I think they have 30 screens in Berlin. It costs less than 20 euro. And I think there it's really a very good idea, because an art house cinema, well, at least the York Group in Germany, you can rely on. Every film they are showing should be a good film. And if you are interested in these kinds of films, you don't take any risk looking a film which you don't know. In a multiplex, it's completely different. There are a lot of films maybe you don't like, and therefore the art house flat rate idea with a lot of screens in a big city, I think is working very good. For our group, well, is thinking about it, but we are not sure whether we realize it or not.
In Spain, we don't have experiences with, well, we had experience in the past that did not went well about subscription schemes, but so far there is no at the present moment there are no such promotions. Regarding 2-for-1 and initiatives like that, it's true that pricing is an issue, and this happens. We see it in La Fiesta del Cine. In recent research we did in La Fiesta del Cine, 50% of the audience only went to the cinema because of La Fiesta del Cine, but the other 50% of the audience were people that are regular customers that take advantage of the very, very low price to see as many movies as they can. So I think it's trying to find a balance. We do that twice a year, not every weekend.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I would suggest we switch to the next panel to give them also oh, there's a coffee break? Excellent, there's a coffee break. Kim, I'd like to thank you for the presentation and for putting that concept of reach on the agenda for the cinema exhibition industry. And both of you, and you of course, for participating in what I found was really interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.